We've been doing a series for the last 5 weeks. This is the 5th week of the series on the unity principles. And as Misa talked about in her opening chant, it's that the 5th principle is that we must take action. We must live a life in action. And she also alluded to, and I wanted to give it a little more headroom again, we talk about the first principle. There is only one power and one presence active in the universe and in my life, God. In school, we called this OP squared, one power, one presence, OP squared, because every time we try to define the divine, try to define God, we fall short because God is beyond any words that we can use to describe it. God is that which cannot be limited. And every time we try and use language, we limit it. So all spiritual practices and all religions fail when they attempt to put parameters and rules around something that by its presence and by its very being cannot be locked down. So to understand that when we say God is everything, there is only one power, we mean God is not all powerful, but all power. God is not all knowing, but all knowledge. God is not everywhere present. God is the presence itself, the awareness, the consciousness that makes us know I am here, and so are you, that we are here in this existence. And that is where we get a glimpse, a transient glimpse of the divine that makes us feel the elevated human joy of existence. Our second principle leads right into that. When we understand there is only divine, only the divinity everywhere present, we cannot escape being it. We are divine because we're made in the very soup of divinity. We're made as an expression of the divine, and therefore we are goodness itself. We're not raised in original sin. We're raised and we're created as original blessing. And when we can let go of the doctrine that was adopted for some reason that tells us that we're born sinners and understand that we're born saints, just like little Oliver there walking down the aisle now, that little angel, that's us, folks, right? Not original blessing, divine. Our third principle then is that we create with our thoughts and beliefs. And here's the double-edged sword of that, folks, because when we take on false beliefs, they create too. When we take on false words of hatred, of separation, of not enoughness, of fear and anxiety, those thoughts and those feelings and those words create. The divine is generous to a fault because we can create the world we live in. And we always talk about this. Yeah, right, Oliver. The world we live in isn't Eden anymore. We're all living east of Eden because we believe we have eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right and wrong, black and white, good and bad, lack and plenty. So as we can let go of that and have an experience of truth and wholeness, we step right into our fourth principle, is that prayer and meditation align us, correct our thinking, and bring us back to that wholeness that is the divinity of our true nature. And when we can align our heart, mind with the divine, we create and create and create that heaven on earth, that place of consciousness that is pure bliss. Now, those are all wonderful and exciting ideas if you're a theological geek like me. They may be wonderful and exciting even if you're not a theological geek like me, but it's not enough. It's not enough to have an intellectual understanding of these. It is more important that we live the truth we know, that we analyze ourselves, look at ourselves, know ourselves so completely that we shift from what is to what could be by the force of our actions and our behaviors. When we know that we are divine and everyone else is divine, we treat people differently, and then we live in that heaven on earth. So I wanted to take this opportunity to dive further into the fifth principle. So understand it really is crucial to our understanding of our purpose here on earth. Because we often teach, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And we must dive fully into that human experience. We must live with others in community to understand what it is to practice the fifth principle. So I'll give you an example I think we can all relate to. It is really, really nice and easy to be joyful, pleasant, kind to people here on Sunday. It may not be, in your experience, as easy to do it with your own family at home or your extended family when they bring up politics, or sometimes with our spouses when we've been married for a certain amount of time and there are certain things that drive us crazy about each other, right? In those moments that you get to lift above that and remember the truth that that's that divine person, even though they may not be acting so divinely at the moment, right? To remember the truth of who they are so that we can remember the truth of who we are. Ellen Davenport wrote a book called The Five Principles, and she is the vice president in charge of communications and media at Unity World Headquarters. She says this in The Five Principles: when we are living the truth, any action we take will be from a form of consciousness of spirit, and oneness, with ego in service to soul. And I know that has been true in my life. When I get caught in ego, when I get caught going, and I realize that I'm feeling hurt, that I feel like I deserve something I'm not getting, or need some accolade and some acknowledgement that may not be coming in the form I think it should come in, that my ego has gotten in the way of service. And I can step back and use that moment not to spiritually bypass and say, it's all good, but to notice how ego is insidious and can sometimes take possession of us. I was doing service for the World Headquarters, and I found myself triggered by an experience where I thought I wasn't treated fairly or acknowledged enough. And I took it to prayer and meditation. I felt my feelings. I talked about it with people I trusted and realized that it was a belief of privilege, a belief that I deserved something that wasn't what I intended at first. An ego had taken over my service in this organization. But when I could step back and acknowledge that, I could recommit myself to service selflessly. I cannot say it correct today, but without self involved in it. How about that? Taking my own personal stuff out of the equation so I could serve the higher order. And this is where our principles come into being. There are many different ways to be of service to the world and to lift and to share our consciousness with the world. It may not come in the form you think it should come for you. Doesn't always do that for me. And it's an opportunity, as one of my dear friends says, it's another effing growth opportunity, right? Yes, I said that from platform, Elaine, right? And so we get to step up in those moments and realize the fragility of our ego and how we can step beyond it and to live with ego in service to soul. Jesus, in the Gospels, according to Matthew at least, says this: when I was hungry, you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Just as you did to the least of these, you did it to me. And that is one of the biggest confrontations we all face in this life, this urban life, right? We are surrounded by people here in San Francisco who are in need. Some of us who are sitting here today have created organizations that help serve them. I, on the way to service today, stopped to pick up the donuts you were all enjoying down below at the local donut store by my house, and found a homeless man begging as I was picking up food. And yet the thought occurred, I don't have time. I'm not going to engage, right? And I have a wallet filled with cash. And I'm like, and I had to pause and stop and remember that I had already put this quote in the deck today. And to stop and to re-engage with the homeless person in another way, because I had my daughter in the car, I was late to get here, I had to pick up the donuts, and all of those worldly things got in the way of me being who I claim to be and want to be, right? And so those moments where we get to take these principles and put them into action, where we get to look at the homeless person with the needle hanging out of their arm here in San Francisco, we get to see that more than I like to see, and know that that is still a child, an expression of the divine, and that it is a right to give to them. When I was an active drug addict, when I was smoking cocaine 20 years ago, crack. I don't make it pretty. I was smoking crack, wasn't smoking cocaine. That was my life, and people still gave to me. People still treated me well. I was one of those people that this quote talks about. And it transformed my life, that I can stand here 20 years later and be a different person. And still, the work of the fifth principle for me is to remember that on a daily basis, and remember it when I'm in those encounters with other human beings struggling to remember the truth of who they are. That I get to be generous, I get to be loving, I get to be wastefully giving to them, right? Because it is not true that you can waste love. There's no end to it, folks. And it's the same is true with money. Whether we want to believe that or not, it's one of the hardest principles we have to learn, is that money is only energy, and energy cannot be destroyed. It can only change form, right? And so when we give of our cash, when I pulled out $5 and gave it to the man so he could have breakfast this morning, it was so that I could see that energy interchange and transform a simple moment, a simple request, to step into the principles that I love and teach, to embody them. As you can see, I have a theme going. I just keep putting the number 5 up in different ways so that you remember this is the fifth principle, action. Frederick Douglass talks about it this way. I prefer to be true to myself, even at the hazard of incurring the ridicule of others, rather than to be false and to incur my own abhorrence. That has been one of the hardest lessons for me in this life. And one of the lessons that I have had to learn over and over and over again, that if I am not true to myself, if I am not true to my authentic expression, I'm actually no good to the world, because I won't like myself. In many different forms, I've had to learn that lesson. When I was a little kid and knew that it was not safe to be gay, even though I was beaten and ridiculed for it, I tried to figure out how to blend in or how to stay with a certain group of people so I wouldn't be persecuted. And then when I became an adult and found a career, I even found people in that career telling me to stop being so gay. I was in musical theater, folks. I thought that's where you could go, right? But I really had teachers tell me you will not get the audition. You will not get past the casting directors. Your acting is great, your performance is fine, but people read you as too gay, so you need to change who you are. And I bought that for a while. No wonder I started smoking cocaine, right? Because I bought that I wasn't good enough, that who I was somehow defective. And we all have that different story. It's not just me. Somehow we all hear the story that if you were just a little more like this, or if your skin was a little lighter, or if this were that, or you were younger, or if you were a different gender, then the world would open up to you, right? And we try and conform, and we try and make those things shift and change, and what we lose in that is ourselves. So the fifth principle is about understanding principle 2. We are divine. We are perfect expressions of that divine energy, that divine life, and our expression is perfect as it is. And to step into life being fully authentic, fully vulnerable, and fully willing to say, I am here. I am here, and I make a difference exactly for who I am. And we all get to do that. That is living the fifth principle, folks. That is putting our principles into action. And when we do, the world sees the difference. And when we do, everyone then has permission to be their authentic self. And authentic doesn't mean you get to be rude. Authentic just means you get to be honoring. You're still in principle, you're honoring the other person. Authentic just means genuine. This is genuinely who I am and how I express. I like colorful shirts. Usually I have colorful nails too. I like it. It's who I want to be. It's how my light shines. And my pink-haired friends and my friends back here who have different expressions. I love seeing them all. Copper-haired friends. No-haired friends. They're all perfect expressions of the divine. Right? So that is not easy. It's taken this soul a lifetime to get here. And it's never too late. Never. There is no limit to that. That's my soul's journey. And then because we are in the midst of social change, thank God we're in the midst of social change. Thank God we're in the midst of Black History Month. Because Desmond Tutu put it this way. Again, 5 pushpins. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you're neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Right? We live in a society, in a community, in a world that tells us all the time, oh, just don't talk about it. And unity is like, well, we're going to affirm the bad away. But we have to make a stand. Fifth principle is also taking a stand and being the voice of change, saying, no, oppression and injustice will not stand here. I speak up against it. I fight against it, even when it causes me blowback and pain, because people don't like to hear that they're performing in an injustice. And when you're the voice that tells them that they are out of integrity, you might get fired. You might have a lot of blowback against yourself. But what you're doing is calling us all up higher. I've had people do it to me, and I am so grateful for them when they say, hey, that wasn't your finest moment, right? We all have them. And when people love us enough to tell us that and to call us up higher, that is a moment of truly living the fifth principle for ourselves and for them. And that's an opportunity we can all get to go higher, to go deeper, to go bigger, and to make the world the heaven on earth. And I want to close with this one. You may never know what results come of your actions. Doing these things isn't easy. You may lose your opportunity to see the results, but if you do nothing, there won't be results. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, I have seen the mountaintop. I may not be able to get there with you. I have seen the promised land from the mountaintop. I may not be able to be there with you, but I know its splendors. We all must take the actions to take the steps and stand in principle, stand in our spiritual principles in this world. For as we do, mountains shift, they move, and the lame walk, and the blind see, and the deaf hear, because we stand in our principles in the world and make a difference. I'm going to invite the music team up now, because what we are, who you are, makes a difference in this world every day. And when we have the courage, when we have the faith to step up and be fully ourselves, we see the world shift in miraculous ways.